My sister ruined my reputation by sending explicit messages to my teachers from my email, so I got her lies on video and kicked her out of my life. Now, our parents are forcing us to act like besties and nothing ever happened. My parents never let me and my older sister do any homework. My older sister Leah was only 8 months older than me. She was charismatic, the type of girl to effortlessly make an entire group of people laugh, the one almost every boy instantly fell in love with. Meanwhile, I was a little more of a tomboy. I always took an interest in cars and loved being able to do things by myself, but when we were starting to hit puberty, it was like a flip had switched. You see, in their eyes, getting married and having children was a woman's only purpose on this earth, so anything outside of that was disgusting and extremely immoral. It's not even like they were religious or anything, just straight up batshit crazy. At first, it seemed like the rules only applied to me. Whenever I tried to do my usual hobbies like soccer or playing with my trucks, my parents would wail on me because I wasn't acting like a woman, and Leah would always comfort me and tell me she loved me for who I was no matter what. But then the rules started hitting her too, because as well as being charismatic, she was also a huge nerd, loved reading, spent her free time getting days ahead on homework. She was in the kitchen doing math one day when my parents completely lost it. Your only job is to clean up and be pretty. They then proceeded to confiscate her calculator and she ran up to our room crying. Before this, we were free to eat whatever we wanted. Sometimes I'd eat until my stomach was so full I felt like vomiting. But the next day for breakfast, we got a quarter of the portion as usual, and it was a bar designed for weight loss. I swear I thought they were pranking us, but that's when my dad said, "You're becoming a woman now, so you have to act like it." Over the next few days, Mom was gifting us with expensive YSL perfume and other name brand makeup products. She'd spend hours every day showing us how to get the perfect wing and blend foundation properly. And she even told us that if we didn't look like we were at least 16 by the time we were done getting ready for school, then we weren't allowed to go. And to most kids, not going to school would probably sound like a dream. But to us, school was our only escape. "Mom, why are we doing this?" Leah asked, voice shaking. "Honey, in just a few years, all the good men will be gone. And if you don't get one soon, you will die alone. You don't want that now, do you?" She answered Leah's question, but I knew it was a threat to us both. So from there, me and Leah focused all our energy into looking older. We didn't even have time to do our homework or study because of how much time maintenance took. By the time we had both turned 13, we could have passed for 17. Every boy in our grade either wanted me or Leah, and we were getting dozens of Snapchat ads a day. We knew it was kind of weird, but we didn't care, because when we updated our mom on all this, they'd treat us 100 times better. No yelling, no pain. Just a happy family going on trips to Disneyland or beautiful beaches. I think eventually we just convinced ourselves that we had super cool parents who were helping us be the most popular girls in school, and let us skip homework and didn't care if our grades were bad. Honestly, things were pretty sweet for a while. Until one day when Leah started hating me. We were in the middle of doing what we always did, rating each other's Instagram bikini photos and deleting the ones we didn't like. And I showed Leah a loser from our school that was liking all my posts and highlight stories. But instead of laughing like always, Leah went completely silent. I shook her, thinking she was just playing. "Leave me alone," she yelled, before violently swapping phones with me and slamming the door. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the beginning of Leah disowning me as a sister, and instead seeing me as competition. Every morning before school, Leah would glance at my outfit, roll her eyes, and then put on something slightly more revealing. And every night at dinner, she would brag about how many pounds of weight she'd lost. Slowly, my parents started treating her better. It was subtle at first. On her 14th birthday, she got a huge diamond necklace, and on mine, they got me a simple bracelet. But even this wasn't enough for Leah. She needed to eliminate me as an opponent. I started getting this awful gut feeling whenever she was around me, like my intuition warning me that she was going to do something really bad. So I set up a tripwire in my room attached to a bell, so if she ever tried to come in, it would wake me up. And not even a week later, I was fast asleep at 3 a.m. when I heard the alarm ring. As I looked up, the corrosive bowl of acid she had taken from our chem class splashed onto the floor and furniture as well as her hands and face. She screamed out in agony, and our parents rushed into my room to take my sister to the hospital. I was sort of hoping that the whole thing would make our parents realize how insane they'd become, and we could go back to normal. But I was wrong, because instead they started treating me better than Leah. Like a lot better. And it made her so resentful of me that she wanted to ruin my life, for good. The next morning, I woke up to find my room still smelling like chemicals. I spent 2 hours scrubbing the floor where the solution had spilled. My parents didn't even offer to help. They just kept talking about how Leah was such a disappointment, and how I was the good daughter now. It made me feel gross inside. When Leah came home from the hospital 3 days later, her hands were bandaged, and she had a small patch on her cheek. The doctor said she was lucky it wasn't worse. My parents barely acknowledged her. They just told her to go to her room and think about what she'd done. I tried to talk to her that night, but she wouldn't even look at me. School was weird after that. People kept asking what happened to Leah's face. She told everyone she had a cooking accident. I didn't correct her. What was I supposed to say? My sister tried to sneak into my room with corrosive chemicals while I slept. Nobody would believe that. The next few weeks were super tense at home. My mom started taking me shopping alone, buying me expensive clothes while Leah stayed home. My dad actually talked to me at dinner instead of just criticizing everything I did. It should have felt nice, but it just felt wrong. One day after school, I found all my makeup smashed on my bathroom floor. My favorite dress was cut to shreds. I knew it was Leah, but when I told my parents, they went ballistic. They took away her phone and grounded her for a month. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. That night, I heard crying from Leah's room. I knocked on her door, but she told me to go away. I went in anyway. She was sitting on her bed, her face all red and puffy. "What do you want?" she asked, wiping her eyes. "Come to gloat?" I sat down on the edge of her bed. "I didn't ask them to punish you." "Whatever," she said. "You're loving this. You're their favorite now." I tried to explain that I didn't want to be the favorite. I just wanted things to go back to normal. She laughed in my face and told me to get out. I left feeling worse than before. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. It just said, "Watch your back." I crumpled it up and threw it away. I figured Leah was just being dramatic. Boy, was I wrong. 2 days later, I opened my locker to find hundreds of printed screenshots of my private messages with this guy Tyler I'd been texting. The messages weren't even that bad, just normal flirty stuff. But seeing them printed out and plastered in my locker made me want to die. I ripped them all down before anyone could see. When I got home, I confronted Leah. She just smiled and said, "That was just the beginning." I should have told my parents, but I knew they'd just punish her more, and that would make everything worse. So I kept quiet and started being more careful. I changed all my passwords and started keeping my phone with me at all times. For a few days, nothing happened. I started to think maybe Leah had given up. Then one morning, I woke up to find my hair had been chopped off while I slept. Not all of it, just chunks here and there, so I looked completely ridiculous. I screamed so loud my dad came running in. When my parents saw what happened, they completely lost it. My mom was crying about how I was ruined, and my dad was yelling at Leah, who kept insisting she didn't do it. But who else could it have been? I had to wear a hat to school for weeks while it grew out. After that, my parents moved Leah to the guest bedroom downstairs. They said they couldn't trust her anymore. I felt terrible, but I was also scared of what she might do next. I started locking my bedroom door at night and pushing my dresser in front of it. I kept a baseball bat under my bed. I know that sounds extreme, but you don't know what it's like to live with someone who hates you that much. The weird thing was, at school, Leah acted like everything was normal. She still hung out with her friends, still flirted with boys, grades, still got invited to all the parties, but she completely ignored me, like I didn't exist. One day in math class, I got called to the principal's office. When I got there, the principal, Mr. Jacobson, looked really uncomfortable. He showed me a bunch of inappropriate pictures that had been sent from my school email account to like half the teachers. I was mortified. I kept telling him it wasn't me, that someone must have hacked my account, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I got suspended for 3 days. My parents were furious. They didn't believe me either, though they should have considered Leah given her recent behavior. The whole time I was home, Leah kept giving me these little smirks when no one was looking. I knew it was her, but I had no way to prove it. When I got back to school, everyone was whispering about me. Apparently, Leah had been telling people I got suspended for sending dirty pictures to teachers. My reputation was completely trashed. Even my friends started avoiding me. I was sitting alone at lunch when this girl Madison came and sat next to me. I didn't know her that well. She was kind of quiet and kept to herself, but she told me she didn't believe the rumors. She said Leah had done something similar to her last year. Leah's good at making people look bad, Madison said. She did it to me when I got paired with Jeremy for a science project. She liked him, so she spread rumors that I was stalking him. It was the first time I realized Leah might have been doing this kind of stuff for a while. I just never noticed because it wasn't directed at me before. Madison and I started hanging out more. It was nice having someone who believed me. We'd eat lunch together and sometimes study at the library after school. I couldn't bring her home though. My parents were still obsessed with me and Leah being proper young ladies who would attract good husbands. They wouldn't approve of Madison with her short hair and baggy clothes. Things were quiet for a few weeks. Too quiet. I kept waiting for Leah's next move, but nothing happened. Then one Friday, I came home to find my parents waiting for me in the living room. They looked serious. Sit down, my dad said. We need to talk. My mom was holding my laptop. My stomach dropped. I knew whatever was coming wasn't good. We found some disturbing things on your computer, she said, her voice shaking. Messages to older men, arrangements to meet them. My heart started racing. What? No, I never did that. My dad showed me the messages. They looked like they came from my accounts, but I had never written them. Some creepy 40-year-old guy was planning to meet me at the mall tomorrow. It wasn't me, I said, starting to cry. It was Leah. She's trying to get me in trouble, but they didn't believe me. Why would they? The messages came from my accounts, my computer. Leah had set me up perfectly. They took away my phone, my laptop, everything. They said I was grounded indefinitely. They even talked about sending me to some kind of therapy camp for troubled teens. I was in my room crying when Leah walked in. She didn't say anything, just stood there smiling. Why are you doing this? I asked her. She shrugged. Because I can. Because you took my place, and now I'm taking everything from you. That's when I knew this wasn't going to stop. Leah wasn't just angry or jealous. She wanted to destroy me completely. And if I didn't do something soon, she might actually succeed. I spent that night lying awake, staring at my ceiling and trying to figure out what to do. The baseball bat under my bed didn't feel like enough protection anymore. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch, wondering if Leah was planning something new. This wasn't just about Leah being jealous or wanting attention. She was systematically trying to ruin my life, and my parents were falling for it completely. The worst part was how calculated it all seemed. Like she'd been planning this for months, just waiting for the right moment to strike. The next morning at breakfast, my parents wouldn't even look at me. They kept talking about how disappointed they were and how they raised me better than this. Mom kept sighing dramatically while stirring her coffee, and Dad hid behind his newspaper, occasionally lowering it just enough to give me a disapproving glance. Leah sat across from me, eating her stupid weight loss breakfast bar with this smug little smile on her face. The way she delicately broke off each piece, savoring it while watching me squirm, made my blood boil. I wanted to scream. After my parents left for work, I cornered Leah in the kitchen. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust particles floating between us like the tension in the air. I told her I knew what she was doing and demanded she tell our parents the truth. She just laughed in my face, a cold, hollow sound that echoed off the kitchen tiles and said nobody would believe me anyway. Then she accidentally spilled her orange juice all over my white shirt before heading out the door, her backpack swinging carelessly as she practically skipped away. I changed my shirt and walked to school alone, trying to come up with a plan. The spring air felt too cheerful for my mood, birds chirping mockingly from the trees lining our street. I couldn't just keep reacting to whatever Leah did next. I needed to get ahead of her somehow, to anticipate her next move before she made it. My thoughts raced through possible scenarios, each one seeming more desperate than the last. At lunch, I found Madison at our usual table by the windows and told her everything. About the fake messages, about my parents freaking out, all of it. The cafeteria buzzed with normal teenage chatter around us, a stark contrast to the conspiracy I was describing. Madison listened without interrupting, her forehead creasing with concern, which I appreciated. She pushed her untouched tater tots toward me in a silent gesture of solidarity. You need proof, she said finally, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. Something they can't ignore, something concrete that shows it's Leah, not you. She was right, but how was I supposed to get proof? Leah was too careful. She always made sure to cover her tracks, to make it look like I was the troublemaker. She was playing chess while I was still figuring out checkers. Madison suggested I start keeping a record of everything Leah did. Times, dates, details. She also thought I should try to catch Leah in the act somehow. Maybe set up a trap like I did with the tripwire, but something that would expose her instead of just stopping her. Her eyes lit up as she brainstormed, and for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. After school, I went straight to my room and started a document on my old tablet that my parents had forgotten about. The cracked screen made typing difficult, but I was afraid to use anything else. I wrote down everything Leah had done so far, from the chemical incident to the fake messages. I included every detail I could remember, the exact wording of messages, the timing of events, the reactions from everyone involved. It felt good to get it all out, like I was taking back some control. The next day was Saturday, and my parents made me stay home while they took Leah shopping. Apparently, she deserved a treat for putting up with my behavior. I watched from my bedroom window as they backed out of the driveway, Leah sitting smugly in the front seat, my usual spot. I used the time alone to search Leah's room for any evidence I could find. Her room was irritatingly perfect. Bed made with hospital corners, books arranged by color on the shelves, not a speck of dust anywhere. It was like a showroom, designed to impress our parents. I felt weird going through her stuff, but I was desperate. I checked under her mattress, in her drawers, behind her posters. Nothing. Then I noticed her trash can. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper with my email password written on it. My heart raced as I carefully smoothed it out. I took it as evidence, slipping it into my pocket like it was made of gold. When they got home, shopping bags rustling as they came through the door, I tried to show my parents the paper. They just got mad at me for going in Leah's room. My dad's face turned that particular shade of red it always did when he was trying not to yell in front of the girls. He said I was becoming obsessed and needed to take responsibility for my actions instead of blaming my sister. I wanted to scream. That night, I heard Leah on the phone with someone, laughing about how gullible our parents were. I pressed my ear against the wall separating our rooms, straining to catch every word. I recorded part of it on my tablet, but when I played it back, you couldn't really tell what she was talking about. The audio was muffled and distorted, picking up more of my nervous breathing than her actual words. Another dead end. Sunday was even worse. My parents made me sit down at the kitchen table and write an apology letter to the teachers I'd supposedly sent inappropriate emails to. The blank paper stared up at me accusingly as I tried again to explain that it wasn't me, but they wouldn't listen. My mom kept pacing behind me, her slippers shuffling against the linoleum, saying things like, "We raised you better than this," and What happened to our sweet little girl? I just sat there, writing a fake apology for something I didn't do, feeling more alone than ever. Each word felt like a betrayal of myself. Monday morning, I woke up to find my backpack soaking wet. All my notebooks were ruined, pages stuck together, and ink bleeding into unreadable smudges. When I confronted Leah, she just shrugged and said maybe I should be more careful where I leave my stuff. Her innocent act was so convincing that even I almost believed her for a second. My parents told me to stop accusing my sister of everything and to be more responsible with my belongings. I borrowed paper from Madison at school and tried to reconstruct my notes as best I could, squinting at the smeared ink to decipher what I'd written. During lunch, she introduced me to her friend Eric, who was apparently some kind of computer genius. He was lanky, with perpetually messy hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. I was skeptical at first, but Madison insisted he could help. The way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching made me wonder if there was something more than friendship there. Eric explained that if Leah was hacking into my accounts, there might be a way to prove it wasn't me sending those messages. He talked about IP addresses and login timestamps using terms I barely understood. He asked for my laptop, but I had to tell him my parents had taken it away. He frowned and said he'd need to think about another approach, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the cafeteria table. After school, I found a dead frog in my locker, just sitting there on top of my books, its lifeless eyes staring up at me. My stomach lurched at the sight, and I had to swallow hard to keep from gagging. I knew immediately it was Leah, but I had no way to prove it. I wrapped it in paper towels from the bathroom and threw it away before anyone could see, scrubbing my hands until they were raw afterward. When I got home, Leah was already there, helping my mom prepare dinner like the perfect daughter. She stood at the counter, carefully chopping vegetables with the precision of a surgeon, nodding attentively as mom talked about her day at work. She gave me this innocent smile that made my skin crawl. I went straight to my room and added the frog incident to my growing list, my hand shaking slightly as I typed. The next day, Eric found me before first period. His eyes were bright with excitement as he said he had an idea. If I could get access to the family computer at home, he could install a program that would record everything that happened on it. That way, if Leah tried to mess with my accounts again, we'd have proof. He explained it all in a rushed whisper as students streamed past us in the hallway. The problem was getting to the computer. My parents were watching me like hawks, convinced I was some kind of delinquent who couldn't be trusted. They'd even started checking my tablet periodically, though they hadn't found my secret document yet. But then I got lucky. That night, they announced they were going to visit my Aunt Gloria on Saturday and would be gone all day. They said Leah would be in charge while they were gone, which made her preen like she'd been crowned queen. As soon as they left Saturday morning, their car barely out of the driveway, Leah invited a bunch of her friends over. They took over the living room, playing music and doing each other's makeup. The house filled with the scent of nail polish and the sound of high-pitched giggles. I stayed in my room until I was sure they were distracted, then snuck into my dad's office where the computer was. The office was quiet and dim, the blinds drawn against the morning sun. I followed Eric's instructions, downloading the program and setting it up to run in the background. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. The program would record all keystrokes and take screenshots every few minutes. If Leah tried to use this computer to mess with my accounts again, we'd know. I felt like a spy in one of those movies, planting surveillance equipment in enemy territory. Just as I was finishing, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The floorboard that always creaked gave someone away. I quickly closed everything and pretended to be looking for a book on my dad's shelf. Leah walked in with her friend Ashley, both of them giving me suspicious looks. Ashley's heavily mascaraed eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. "What are you doing in here?" Leah demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. I grabbed a random book off the shelf and said I was just looking for something to read. I tried to keep my voice casual, though my pulse was racing. Leah didn't look convinced, but she just rolled her eyes and told me to stay out of the way of her party. I went back to my room, heart pounding but feeling like I'd finally done something proactive. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. Leah was being suspiciously nice to me, even in front of our parents. She passed me dishes at dinner without being asked and even complimented my hair one morning. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, jumping at every notification on my tablet, constantly checking to see if the monitoring program had caught anything. The waiting was almost worse than the attacks. On Wednesday, it finally happened. I got an alert from the program showing screenshots of Leah logging into my Facebook account. She was sending messages to a guy named Logan in my grade, saying really inappropriate stuff that made it look like I was obsessed with him. The messages were embarrassingly detailed, describing fantasies that made me blush just reading them. I watched in real time as she set me up, feeling a mix of anger and vindication. Finally, I had proof. I immediately downloaded all the evidence and sent it to Madison and Eric. Eric helped me put together a clear timeline showing exactly when Leah had accessed my accounts and what she'd done. We even had screenshots of her creating the fake email conversations with teachers. The evidence was damning and undeniable. Now I just needed to figure out how to use this information. I couldn't just show my parents. They'd never believe me. They'd probably just punish me for installing spyware on the family computer. I needed a better plan, something that would force them to see the truth. The next day at school, Logan confronted me about the messages. He was with a group of his friends by the lockers, all of them laughing and making gross comments as I approached. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I was so embarrassed I wanted to die. I tried to explain that it wasn't me, that my sister had hacked my account, but they just laughed harder. Logan made a crude gesture that sent his friends into fits of laughter. That's when Madison stepped in. She pulled up the evidence on her phone and showed Logan the screenshots of Leah sending those messages. He looked confused at first, his cocky smile faltering, then kind of freaked out. By lunch, the whole school was talking about how Leah had been catfishing people using my accounts. The tide of gossip had turned against her for once. When I got home, Leah was waiting for me. She stood in the entryway, arms crossed, her face a mask of fury. She grabbed my arm and dragged me into the bathroom, turning on the shower to muffle our voices. The steam quickly fogged the mirror, blurring our reflections. "What did you do?" she hissed, her fingers digging into my arm. I pulled my arm away, rubbing the spot where her nails had left marks. "I didn't do anything. You're the one who's been hacking my accounts and trying to ruin my life." She got right in my face, her breath hot against my skin. "You think you're so smart? This isn't over. Not even close. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Her words sent a chill down my spine despite the steamy bathroom. That night, I slept with my dresser pushed against my door again. I was scared of what Leah might do now that she knew I was fighting back. Every creak and groan of the house settling made me start awake, imagining her trying to get into my room. The next morning, I woke up to screaming. My mom was standing in the hallway, holding her jewelry box, sobbing hysterically. Her face was blotchy and tear-stained, her normally perfect hair disheveled. Apparently, her diamond earrings and wedding ring were missing. And guess whose room they were found in? Mine. They were tucked into the back of my sock drawer, wrapped in a tissue like I'd tried to hide them. I kept insisting I didn't take them, that Leah must have planted them there. But my parents weren't listening. They were too busy yelling about trust and respect and how they didn't even recognize me anymore. My dad's voice boomed through the house, while my mom's quieter sobs provided a heartbreaking counterpoint. Leah stood behind them, looking appropriately shocked and disappointed in her troubled sister. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. I was grounded for a month. No phone, not that I had one anymore. No going out, nothing. I was only allowed to go to school and come straight home. My dad even talked about installing a tracking app on my tablet so they could monitor my location at all times. The walls of my room felt like they were closing in on me. I felt completely defeated. Even with proof that Leah had been messing with my accounts, I couldn't convince my parents that she was setting me up. They were so blinded by their weird obsession with us being proper young ladies that they couldn't see what was happening right in front of them. It was like they wanted to believe the worst about me. That weekend was miserable. My parents made me clean the entire house as punishment while Leah got to go to the mall with her friends. I scrubbed toilets and mopped floors, my hands raw from cleaning products, trying not to cry from frustration. The physical labor at least gave me something to focus on besides my anger. While cleaning Leah's room, I found something interesting. Hidden under her mattress was a diary. The cover was pink leather with a tiny lock that wasn't actually locked. I know I shouldn't have read it, but I was desperate. Most of it was just normal teenage stuff, but then I found entries where she wrote about how much she hated me, how she was going to make me pay for stealing her place, how she'd do whatever it took to be the favorite again. The handwriting got more frantic on these pages, pressing so hard into the paper that it left indentations on the pages beneath. I took pictures of those pages with my tablet, more evidence for my growing file. My hands trembled as I carefully replaced the diary exactly as I'd found it. On Monday, things got even worse. I was called to the principal's office again. This time, Mr. Jacobson looked really serious, his bushy eyebrows drawn together in a frown. He said someone had reported seeing substances in my locker. They'd done a search and found a small bag of pills hidden in my math textbook. The pills were scattered across his desk like tiny accusations. I was suspended pending an investigation. The principal said they were considering expulsion, though he seemed troubled by the situation. My parents were called to pick me up, and the car ride home was dead silent. The only sound was my mom's occasional sniffling from the passenger seat. When we got home, my dad exploded, yelling about how I was throwing my life away and embarrassing the family. His face turned purple as he shouted, spittle flying from his lips. I tried to explain that I was being set up, that Leah was planting things in my locker, but they wouldn't listen. My mom just cried and asked where they went wrong with me. My dad said they were considering sending me to a boarding school for troubled girls. The brochure appeared on the kitchen counter the next day, a place called Harmony Ridge, with pictures of solemn-looking girls in uniforms. That night, I heard my parents and Leah talking downstairs. I snuck to the top of the stairs to listen, the carpet muffling my footsteps. Leah was telling them how worried she was about me, how she'd noticed me hanging out with the wrong crowd lately. She even suggested that maybe I needed professional help. My parents ate it up, praising her for being such a caring sister. I could practically hear her soaking up their approval like a sponge. I went back to my room and cried into my pillow. It felt like my whole life was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Leah was winning, and she knew it. The boarding school brochure seemed to glow in the dark, a reminder of how close I was to losing everything. The next day, while my parents were at work, Leah came into my room. She sat on my bed, looking all concerned and sisterly. She was wearing one of her perfect outfits, her hair styled just the way Mom liked it. You know, if you just apologized and admitted what you've done, maybe they wouldn't send you away, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She picked at an invisible thread on my comforter, not meeting my eyes. I stared at her in disbelief. Why are you doing this? We used to be close. I remembered when we were little, how we'd build blanket forts together and stay up whispering long after bedtime. She shrugged, finally looking up with cold eyes. Because there's only room for one favorite daughter, and it's going to be me. After she left, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. The glow-in-the-dark stars we'd put up years ago had mostly fallen off, leaving just a few dim points of light. I couldn't let them send me away. I needed to expose Leah somehow, but how? My parents wouldn't believe anything I said at this point. That's when I got a text from Madison on my tablet. She and Eric had been working on a plan. They thought they could help me catch Leah in the act, but I'd need to get back to school first. The message was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. I spent the next 3 days being the perfect daughter. I cleaned without being asked, spoke politely, wore the clothes my mom picked out for me. I even apologized for my behavior without actually admitting to anything specific. I swallowed my pride and my anger, playing the role they wanted to see. By Friday, my parents were starting to thaw a little. They said if I kept it up, they might reconsider the boarding school idea. The brochure disappeared from the counter, which I took as a good sign. The school agreed to let me return on Monday, with the understanding that I'd be on probation. Any more incidents and I'd be expelled for sure. Mr. Jacobson made that very clear, his voice stern as he explained the conditions of my return. Sunday night, I could barely sleep. I was nervous about going back to school, about facing everyone after the substance rumors, about whatever plan Madison and Eric had come up with, but mostly, I was terrified of what Leah might do next. I tossed and turned, my sheets becoming a tangled mess around my legs. Monday morning, I got ready for school in silence. I chose my most unremarkable outfit, hoping to blend into the background. Leah kept giving me these little smirks when our parents weren't looking, like she knew something I didn't. I ignored her and focused on getting through the day, on connecting with Madison and Eric. At school, people whispered as I walked by. I caught fragments of conversations, substances, crazy, did you hear about? I kept my head down and headed straight for Madison's locker, where she and Eric were waiting for me. Madison gave me a quick hug, and even Eric offered an awkward pat on the shoulder. We have a plan, Eric said, pushing his glasses up his nose, but it's kind of risky. They explained that they wanted to set a trap for Leah. They'd spread a rumor that I had hidden a diary in my locker with dirt on everyone in school, including Leah. The hope was that she'd try to break into my locker to find it, and we'd catch her in the act. Eric had it all mapped out, his eyes bright with excitement. I was skeptical. What if she didn't take the bait? What if we got caught? But I was out of options, so I agreed. We huddled together in the empty science lab, finalizing the details of our plan. Madison started the rumor that day, casually mentioning to one of the biggest gossips in school that I'd been keeping a detailed diary of all the messed up things happening at home and school. By lunch, I could tell the rumor had reached Leah. She kept looking at me with this calculating expression, her eyes narrowing whenever our gazes met across the cafeteria. After school, we put the plan in motion. I made a big show of putting a notebook in my locker, then left with Madison and Eric. But instead of going home, we hid in an empty classroom across from my locker. The room smelled of chalk dust and teenage sweat. Eric had borrowed a small camera from the AV club and set it up to watch my locker. We huddled around his laptop, watching the empty hallway on the screen. We waited for almost an hour. The school grew quiet around us, most students and teachers gone for the day. I was starting to think the plan had failed when we saw Leah approach my locker. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then pulled out a piece of paper, probably with my combination that she'd somehow gotten. My heart raced as we watched her on the screen. We watched on Eric's laptop as she opened my locker and started rifling through my stuff. Her movements were quick and practiced, like she'd done this before. When she found the notebook, she opened it eagerly. Her face fell when she saw it was just filled with notes saying, "I know what you're doing," on every page. The look of shock on her face was almost worth everything I'd been through. That's when we made our move. The three of us confronted her right there in the hallway. Eric was recording everything on his phone. Our footsteps echoed in the empty corridor as we approached her. "What are you doing in my locker, Leah?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. She slammed the locker shut, looking caught. I was just, for once, she seemed at a loss for words. Her usual confidence shattered. Just what? Planting more substances? Setting me up again? I was shaking with anger, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice wavered. She clutched the notebook to her chest like a shield. Eric held up his phone. "We have you on video breaking into her locker, and we have evidence of you hacking her accounts too." The red recording light blinked steadily, capturing every moment. Leah's face went pale. She looked from Eric to me, then to Madison. "No one will believe you," she said, but she didn't sound confident anymore. Her voice had lost its usual edge. Maybe not, I said, but they'll believe this. I held up my tablet, showing her all the evidence we'd collected. The screenshots of her accessing my accounts, the diary entries where she wrote about framing me, the video we'd just taken of her breaking into my locker. It was overwhelming, even to me. For the first time, Leah looked scared. Her carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing the insecurity beneath. What do you want? Her voice was small, almost childlike. I want you to confess. To our parents, to the principal, to everyone you've lied to about me. My voice was stronger than I expected, fueled by the righteousness of finally having the upper hand. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. That's never going to happen. She tried to sound defiant, but the effect was ruined by the slight tremor in her voice. Then I'll show them this evidence myself, I said. All of it. Every last bit. They won't believe you, she insisted. They think you're the troubled one, remember? She was grasping at straws now, and we both knew it. She was right, and she knew it. My parents were so convinced I was the problem that they'd probably find some way to dismiss the evidence. They'd say I faked it, or that I was overreacting, or that I needed to stop blaming my sister for my problems. That's when Madison spoke up. What if we had an adult they trust confirm it? Her voice was calm and reasonable, a stark contrast to the tension between Leah and me. She explained that her mom was a computer security specialist. If we showed her the evidence, she could verify that it was real and explain to my parents exactly how Leah had been framing me. Madison had already talked to her mom about it, and she was willing to help. Leah's smug expression faltered. You're bluffing. But her eyes darted nervously between us, uncertainty written across her face. Try me, I said, holding her gaze steadily for the first time in weeks. We stood there in a standoff for what felt like forever. The school was silent around us, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the hallway windows. Finally, Leah turned and walked away, but not before saying, "This isn't over." I knew she was right. This was just the beginning of an even bigger battle. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I might actually win. That night, I showed Madison's mom, Mrs. Chen, all the evidence we'd collected. She was horrified by what Leah had been doing. Her professional demeanor slipped as she scrolled through the screenshots, her expressions shifting from surprise to anger. She agreed to talk to my parents, to explain the technical details they might not understand. She promised to make them see the truth. We set up a meeting for the next evening. I was so nervous I could barely eat all day. My stomach was in knots and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. What if my parents still didn't believe me? What if they took Leah's side again? The possibilities tormented me throughout the day. When Mrs. Chen arrived, my parents were confused. They thought she was there to discuss a school project or something. We all sat down in the living room, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mrs. Chen calmly explained what she'd found. She showed them the screenshots, the logs, the video of Leah breaking into my locker. She explained in technical terms how someone could hack into another person's accounts. Her professional manner seemed to get through to them in a way my desperate pleas never had. My parents looked stunned. My dad kept shaking his head like he couldn't process what he was hearing. My mom started crying, her mascara running in black streaks down her cheeks. They looked older suddenly, weighed down by the reality of what their perfect daughter had done. Leah tried to deny everything at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. When she realized she was caught, she changed tactics. She started crying, saying she only did it because I was always the favorite, because I got all the attention, because no one cared about her anymore. Her tears looked real, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was trying to make herself the victim again, and the worst part was, it seemed to be working. My mom moved to comfort her, telling her it was okay, that they understood she was just feeling neglected. My dad nodded along, his anger at Leah already softening. I felt like I was going to explode. After everything Leah had done to me, they were still taking her side, still making excuses for her. The injustice of it all burned in my chest like fire. That's when I lost it. I started listing everything she'd done. The chemical attack that could have seriously injured me if I hadn't set up that tripwire. The fake messages that almost got me sent to boarding school. The substances planted in my locker that could have gotten me expelled or worse. My voice rose with each example, years of hurt and frustration pouring out of me. She didn't just feel neglected, I said, my voice shaking. She tried to destroy my life, and you let her. You believed every lie she told about me without even giving me a chance to defend myself. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To have your own parents think you're capable of all these terrible things? My parents looked shocked. I don't think they'd ever heard me stand up for myself like that before. The room fell silent except for Leah's sniffling, which now seemed performative and hollow. Is that true? My dad asked Leah. Did you really do all those things? His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it I'd never heard before. Leah's tears dried up pretty quickly when she realized her act wasn't working anymore. She just shrugged and said, "So what if I did? You guys were the ones who taught us that only one of us could be the favorite, that we had to compete for your love. I was just playing the game better than she was." My parents looked like they'd been slapped. They started denying it, saying they loved us both equally. But Leah and I both knew that wasn't true. They'd always pitted us against each other, always made it clear that their approval was conditional on us fitting their twisted idea of what a proper young lady should be. Their words rang hollow in the face of years of evidence to the contrary. Mrs. Chen looked uncomfortable, like she was witnessing something she shouldn't. She shifted in her seat, her professional demeanor momentarily replaced by genuine discomfort. She excused herself, saying she'd said what she came to say. Before she left, she gave me a supportive squeeze on the shoulder, a small gesture that meant more to me than she could know. After she was gone, my parents tried to talk to us to explain themselves, but neither Leah nor I was interested in hearing it. We both went to our rooms, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. I could hear them talking in hushed, urgent tones downstairs, occasionally raising their voices before remembering we might hear. Later that night, there was a knock on my door. I expected it to be one of my parents coming to make more excuses, but it was Leah. She stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow, less sure of herself. She came in and sat on the edge of my bed. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of rivalry and hurt. "I'm not sorry," she finally said. Not for most of it, anyway. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I wasn't surprised. I know. I picked at a loose thread on my comforter, not looking at her. But I didn't mean for it to go so far, with the chemicals and stuff. Like, I just wanted to scare you. There was a hint of something in her voice. Not quite remorse, but maybe recognition that she'd crossed a line. It wasn't much of an apology, but it was probably the best I was going to get from her. At least it was honest, which was more than I could say for most of our interactions lately. "What happens now?" I asked, finally looking up at her. In the dim light of my room, she looked younger, more like the sister I used to know. She shrugged. "I don't know, but I'm done trying to ruin your life." She said it simply, like she was commenting on the weather. It wasn't exactly a peace treaty, but it was something. A truce, maybe. The beginning of a new chapter in our complicated relationship. The next few days were weird. My parents were walking on eggshells around both of us, like they were afraid we might break. They tried to talk to us about what happened, about their expectations, and how maybe they'd been too hard on us, but it all felt like too little, too late. Their words couldn't erase years of favoritism and impossible standards. At school, things slowly started to improve. The rumors about me died down as new gossip took its place. Madison and Eric stuck by me, becoming real friends instead of just allies in my war against Leah. We started eating lunch together every day, and sometimes they'd come over after school to study. It felt good to have people I could trust. Leah and I weren't friends again, not even close, but we weren't actively trying to destroy each other anymore, which was progress. We existed in a state of cold neutrality, passing each other other in the hallways at home and school without speaking. Occasionally, I'd catch her looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not hatred, but something more complicated. One night, about a week after everything went down, my mom came into my room. She sat on my bed and actually apologized. Not in a vague, "I'm sorry if you felt hurt" kind of way, but a real apology. She admitted that she and my dad had been wrong to push us so hard, to try to make us into something we weren't. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. "We thought we were preparing you for the real world," she said. "We thought we were helping you." She twisted her wedding ring around her finger nervously. I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. The wounds were still too fresh. The betrayal too deep. "Your father and I have been talking," she continued. "We think maybe we all need some help. Family counseling, maybe." She said it tentatively, like she was afraid I'd laugh at the suggestion. I was surprised. My parents had always been against therapy, saying it was for weak people who couldn't handle their problems. My dad especially had scoffed at the idea whenever it came up. "Why the change of heart?" I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. She looked down at her hands. "Because we almost lost both of you. Because we created a situation where you and your sister felt like you had to hurt each other to get our love. What kind of parents does that make us?" Her voice broke on the last question, and I saw tears in her eyes. I didn't have an answer for her, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a tiny flicker of hope that maybe things could get better, that maybe we could find a way forward as a family, broken as we were. The next day, I found a note slipped under my door. It was from Leah. All it said was, "Truce?" The handwriting was hesitant, the question mark drawn with extra care. I wrote back one word, "Truce." I slid it under her door and heard her pick it up from the other side. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And after everything we'd been through, a start was all I could ask for. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but at least now there was a road, not just a dead end. The next morning, I woke up feeling weirdly hopeful. Not like everything was magically fixed or anything, but like maybe things wouldn't completely suck forever. I got ready for school, taking extra time to pick an outfit I actually liked instead of what my parents wanted me to wear. It felt good to just be myself again. When I went downstairs for breakfast, my parents were already at the table with these serious looks on their faces. My stomach immediately dropped. Every time they looked like that, something bad happened. My dad cleared his throat and told me they'd scheduled our first family therapy session for Saturday. I just nodded and grabbed a granola bar, not really knowing what to say. As I was heading out the door, I noticed Leah watching me from the stairs. We made eye contact for a second before she looked away. At school, I found Madison and Eric by the lockers and told them about the therapy thing. Madison seemed excited about it, saying it was a good first step. Eric just shrugged and said his parents did therapy after his dad's gambling problem almost bankrupted them, and it actually helped. I wasn't convinced, but whatever. At least my parents were trying. During lunch, I was sitting with Madison and Eric when Logan came over to our table. I immediately tensed up, expecting him to say something awful about the messages Leah had sent pretending to be me, but instead, he awkwardly apologized for believing the messages were from me. He shuffled his feet and couldn't really look me in the eye, but it seemed genuine. I just nodded and said it was fine, even though it wasn't really. After he left, Madison gave me a little high five under the table. The rest of the week was pretty uneventful. Leah and I were still avoiding each other at home, but at least she wasn't actively trying to destroy my life anymore. My parents kept trying to have these forced family dinners where they'd ask us about our day and pretend everything was normal. It was super awkward, but I played along, better than fighting, I guess. Saturday morning came way too fast. I dragged myself out of bed, dreading the therapy session. My parents were all dressed up like they were going to church or something. Leah wore this conservative sweater set that made her look like a middle-aged librarian. I just put on jeans and a t-shirt. If we were going to talk about our feelings, I was at least going to be comfortable. The therapist's office was in this old converted house with a bunch of plants everywhere. The therapist, Dr. Patel, was younger than I expected, maybe in her 30s. She had us all sit in this circle of chairs and started by explaining how family therapy worked. My dad looked super uncomfortable, shifting in his seat every few seconds. My mom kept nodding way too enthusiastically at everything Dr. Patel said. Leah just stared at the floor. The first session was mostly just Dr. Patel asking us questions about our family. Nothing too deep, just basic stuff about our daily routines and how we communicated. Even those simple questions made my parents squirm. When Dr. Patel asked about their expectations for me and Leah, my dad started rambling about wanting us to be successful and happy. I had to stop myself from rolling my eyes. On the drive home, nobody said anything. My dad turned the radio up too loud, probably to avoid talking. When we got home, Leah went straight to her room, and I did the same. I flopped on my bed and texted Madison about how weird it was. She sent back a bunch of supportive emojis and told me to give it time. The next few therapy sessions were more intense. Dr. Patel started asking about specific incidents, like when my parents first started restricting our food or making us wear makeup. My mom got defensive, saying she was just trying to prepare us for the real world. Dr. Patel asked what exactly she thought the real world expected of women. My mom couldn't really answer that. During our fourth session, Dr. Patel asked Leah why she felt she needed to compete with me. Leah was quiet for a long time before saying, because there was only ever room for one of us to be good enough. My mom started crying when she heard that. My dad just looked at the floor. I didn't know what to feel. After that session, things started changing at home. Small stuff at first. My parents stopped commenting on what we ate. They didn't say anything when I wore the same jeans 3 days in a row. When Leah mentioned wanting to join the debate team, my mom actually seemed interested instead of dismissing it as unfeminine or whatever. One night about a month into therapy, I was in my room working on a history project when Leah knocked on my door. She came in and sat on my bed, not saying anything for a minute. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me this app she'd found for tracking homework assignments. She said maybe it could help me get my grades back up after all the chaos. It was such a normal, sisterly thing to do that I didn't know how to react at first. I just thanked her and downloaded the app. She left after that, but it felt like something important had happened. The next day at school, I ran into Joshua, this guy from my English class who I'd always thought was cute. He asked if I wanted to work together on our Shakespeare project. Before all this drama with Leah, I would have been thrilled. But now I felt weirdly nervous, like maybe he had some ulterior motive. Madison saw us talking and gave me this exaggerated thumbs up from across the hallway, which made me laugh. I agreed to meet Joshua at the library after school. Working with Joshua was actually really nice. He was funny and smart, and he didn't seem to care about all the rumors that had been going around about me. We spent 2 hours going through Romeo and Juliet, and I didn't think about my family drama once. When we finished, he asked if I wanted to get ice cream sometime. I said yes before I could overthink it. When I got home, my mom asked where I'd been. A few months ago, that question would have been loaded with suspicion and judgment, but now she just seemed curious. I told her about the project and about Joshua. She smiled and asked if he was nice, not if he was from a good family, or if he had money, or any of the weird stuff she used to care about, just if he was nice. I said yes, he was. That weekend, we had another therapy session. Dr. Patel asked us to talk about our goals as individuals, not as a family. My dad said he wanted to be more present, less focused on work. My mom admitted she'd been living through us, trying to give us the life she thought she'd missed out on. Leah said she wanted to focus on school and maybe apply to some good colleges. When it was my turn, I said I just wanted to figure out who I was without all the pressure. After the session, my dad took us all out for lunch. It wasn't a fancy place, just a diner near the therapist's office. But it was the first time in years we'd gone out to eat without my parents criticizing what we ordered or how we looked. Leah got a huge plate of pancakes, and nobody said a word about calories or her figure. I ordered a burger burger and fries, and my dad actually asked if I wanted a milkshake too. It was weird but nice. The next week at school, I had my first real date with Joshua. We just went for ice cream after school, nothing fancy. He was easy to talk to, and he didn't pressure me about anything. When he dropped me off at home, he didn't even try to kiss me, just said he had a good time and hoped we could do it again. I found myself smiling as I walked into the house. My mom was in the kitchen when I got home. She asked how it went, and I found myself actually telling her about it. Not the sanitized version I would have given before, but the real story. How nervous I was, how nice Joshua was, how I wasn't sure if I liked him as more than a friend yet. She just listened without judging or giving unwanted advice. It felt strange, but good. That night, I heard my parents arguing in their bedroom. Not the usual kind of fighting, but more like an intense discussion. I couldn't make out most of it, but I heard my mom say something about doing better, and my dad agreeing. The next morning, my dad announced that he was taking a week off work so we could all go on a family vacation. Not to Disneyland or anywhere Instagram-worthy, but to this cabin by a lake that his friend owned, just to relax and spend time together. The cabin trip was actually pretty cool. No cell service, no internet, just woods and water, and a lot of awkward family time. The first day was super tense, none of us really knowing how to act around each other without our usual patterns. But by the second day, things started to ease up. My dad taught me how to fish, something he'd never bothered to do before because it wasn't ladylike. I caught a decent-sized bass and felt ridiculously proud of myself. One afternoon, I found Leah sitting on the dock by herself. I hesitated, then went and sat next to her. We didn't talk for a while, just watched the water. Finally, she said she was sorry for everything she'd done, not in a dramatic way, just matter-of-factly. I said I was sorry too for not realizing how much pressure she was under. It wasn't a tearful reconciliation or anything, but it felt honest. When we got back from the trip, things weren't perfect, but they were better. My parents started letting us make more of our own decisions. They didn't freak out when I got a B- on a math test. They actually seemed interested when Leah talked about wanting to study psychology in college. At school, things improved too. The rumors about me gradually died down as new drama took its place. Madison, Eric, and I became a solid friend group. Joshua and I kept hanging out, taking it slow. It turned out we had a lot in common, especially our taste in music and movies. He never made me feel like I had to look or act a certain way to impress him. One day, about 2 months after everything went down, I was cleaning out my closet when I found all the makeup my mom had bought me. The expensive stuff I used to spend hours applying every morning. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I realized I didn't miss it at all. I boxed it all up and gave it to Madison, who was actually into that kind of thing. Dr. Patel suggested that Leah and I try having sister time once a week, just the two of us doing something we both enjoyed. At first, it was super awkward. We went to a movie and barely spoke to each other. The next week, we tried baking cookies and ended up in a flower fight that had us both laughing until we couldn't breathe. It wasn't like we were best friends again, but it was a start. My parents started changing too. My mom went back to school to finish her degree, something she'd given up when she got married. My dad started cooking dinner once a week. Terrible at first, but gradually improving. They stopped making comments about our appearances or pushing us to attract boys. One night at dinner, about 3 months after our first therapy session, my dad actually apologized. Like a real apology, not just sorry if you felt bad kind of thing. He said he'd been wrong to put so much pressure on us, to make us feel like our only value was in how we looked or who we married. He admitted he'd been raised that way himself and had never questioned it. My mom nodded along, adding her own apology. It was awkward and imperfect, but it felt genuine. After dinner, Leah and I ended up in her room, sitting on her bed like we used to when we were kids. She showed me her college brochures, all these schools with great psychology programs. I told her about how Madison's mom had offered to teach me some basic coding over the summer. We weren't sharing secrets or braiding each other's hair or anything, but it was comfortable, normal. The next day at school, I ran into Logan again. He tried to flirt with me, using the same lines he probably used on every girl. Before, I might have been flattered by the attention. Now I just found it annoying. I politely told him I wasn't interested and walked away feeling weirdly powerful. At lunch, I sat with Madison, Eric, and Joshua. Madison was talking about her plans to start a coding club for girls next year. Eric was showing Joshua some game on his phone. I looked around the cafeteria and spotted Leah with her friends. She caught my eye and gave me a small nod. Not a big dramatic gesture, just a simple acknowledgement. I nodded back. That weekend, we had what Dr. Patel called a family contract session. We all wrote down what we expected from each other going forward. My parents promised to respect our individuality and support our interests, even if they didn't understand them. Leah and I promised to talk to each other directly instead of competing or sabotaging each other. It felt a bit cheesy, but also important. After the session, Leah and I went shopping together. Not for makeup or revealing clothes, but just normal stuff we actually wanted. I bought a new pair of sneakers and a book about car mechanics that I'd been wanting to read. Leah got some science fiction novels and a fancy calculator for her math class. We got ice cream afterward and talked about normal sister stuff. School, friends, the weird history teacher who always had food in his beard. When we got home, my parents were in the living room looking at photo albums. Old pictures of us as little kids, before all the pressure and competition started. There was one of Leah and me in the backyard, covered in mud, grinning at the camera with missing teeth. My mom pointed to it and said, "I miss those little girls." I said they were still here, just older now. She smiled and nodded. That night, I texted Madison about everything. The shopping trip with Leah, the family contract, all of it. She sent back a bunch of heart emojis and said she was proud of me. I realized I was proud of myself too. Not for anything specific, just for getting through it all. The next morning, I woke up early and went downstairs to find Leah already at the kitchen table doing homework. Actual homework. Not pretending to study while really just trying to look pretty. I made myself some toast and sat across from her. She asked if I could help her with her English essay later. I said sure, if she'd help me with my math homework. She nodded and went back to her books. It wasn't a perfect happy ending. My parents still slipped up sometimes, making comments about our appearance or suggesting we should act more ladylike. Leah and I still had arguments and moments of tension. There were days when the old patterns tried to reassert themselves, when I'd catch myself wondering if my parents were comparing us or if Leah was plotting against me. But those moments got less frequent as time went on. We were learning a new way to be a family, one day at a time. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. And real was better than perfect any day. A few weeks later, I was cleaning my room when I found the old tripwire bell I'd set up to catch Leah. It seemed like it was from another lifetime. I threw it in the trash without a second thought. That night at dinner, when my dad asked what we'd done that day, I talked about the car show I'd gone to with Joshua. My mom actually asked questions about the cars instead of whether Joshua came from a good family. Leah mentioned her debate team was going to regionals. My dad said he was proud of both of us, and he meant it. Not because we were pretty or popular or attracting the right kind of attention, but because we were ourselves. And finally, that was enough.